Welcome to the beginning of a great year with Sonlight curriculum materials. My name is Judy, and I wanted to take a few minutes to help you look through the materials that you've just received and help you get them organized so that you get a good start to your school year. Now, I mentioned at the start here that you're going to have a great year with Sonlight, and I can guarantee that because Sonlight has an unmatched, unequaled money-back guarantee on their materials. Now you can see scrolling in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen a web address, and I would encourage you to take a few minutes and go take a look at that page. What you're going to find there is a description of our Love to Learn guarantee, which basically tells you that if you find that your Sonlight materials are not a good fit for your family, perhaps they're not working as you hope they would, that we will be happy to refund your purchase price when you send back your materials. Now, the first thing you want to do is kind of get it all together. Now, I'm assuming that the FedEx man has shown up at your front door with your box, and you've enjoyed what we at Sonlight like to refer to as Box Day. It's kind of like Christmas in the middle of the year. And maybe your kids have already emptied the box and have started oohing and eyeing through all those books and materials. But what you want to do is take all of the product that came in your box and spread it out on a table or maybe on your living room floor, and then using the invoice that was also included, double check your order and make sure you have everything that you ordered. If anything's been back ordered for some reason, which is pretty rare, you'll find that listed on your invoice as well. If something seems to be amiss, maybe you're not finding something you were pretty sure you ordered, or maybe something doesn't make sense about your order, please feel free to use the contact information that's listed on your invoice to get in touch with our customer relations department, and they will be happy to help you iron out any difficulty at all that you're having with your order. Now you can set aside all those piles of wonderful books and get out your shrink-wrapped instructor's guides. Now you may have just a core instructor's guide, or you may also have a language arts or a science instructor's guide. How many of those you ordered doesn't matter. Just go ahead and set them out in a row on your table or living room floor and open each one and set the piles out. And then if you've ordered our binder and tabs, you want to set that at the end of the row. Go ahead and load those tabs into the binder, and you're going to find sequentially numbered 1 through 36 weekly divider tabs, and then some additional tabs near the back. Just go ahead and stick them in your binder. Then you want to look at the first material that you'll find in each pile of instructor's guide pages. You'll probably find a colored cover, and then you'll find some introductory notes and comments and some charts that come before week 1 scheduling pages. I want you to go ahead and take all of those materials and load them in front of the week 1 divider tab in your binder. Then flip over the week 1 tab and go ahead and take all the week 1 materials from your core instructor's guide pile, your language arts, or your science instructor's guide piles, and load those in behind the week 1 tab. Now there will certainly be scheduling, a weekly schedule page, and there may also be some additional teaching notes, or you may have some student activity sheets if you've gotten language arts and science. Get those all behind the week 1 schedule tab. Then you're going to flip over the week 2 tab and repeat that process, picking up all the week 2 materials from each instructor's guide pile and loading it in behind the week 2 tab. Then continue that process with week 3 and week 4 and so on until you load all 36 weeks worth of scheduling material and teaching notes behind those tabs. Then the last tabs that you'll see in the back, there will be one for appendices materials, so find those in your instructor's guide piles and load those in. And then you want to look for your study guide pages. Those primarily come from your core instructor's guide. Now if you're confused as to which pages go with which study guide, just check down in the bottom right-hand corner of those instructor's guide pages and you'll find that they're labeled. So you're apt to find history study guide pages or read aloud study guide pages. Whatever pages you have, match those up with the appropriate tabs and load them in. And now you've got your binder all loaded. But now what you've got is this great big 3-ring, huge binder full of pages. Now it's time to make it yours. And what we mean by that is we're going to customize it a little bit in a way that will work best for your family. Now, if you're brand new to Sonlight and you're just getting started, you may not know yet what works best for your family. So I'm going to offer you 2 or 3 suggestions on how you might tweak this binder a little bit, and then suggest that you try it out as the school year begins. And I'm sure that you will find one approach or another that works better for your unique homeschool dynamic. So first, I like to have my customers think of that big, huge binder as their filing cabinet. Now, it's obviously not shaped like a filing cabinet, but it certainly can be almost as heavy as one. So we're probably not going to want to drag that binder to the table or the couch or wherever you do school each day of the week. So one suggestion is to go ahead and pull out 4 to 6 weeks worth of work, including the divider tabs, and load them into a smaller working binder. Now that might be a 1.5 inch or a 2-inch binder that you've picked up somewhere, and go ahead and load those materials in. And then you can put that bigger binder back on the shelf and just work from that smaller binder for the next month or month and a half. Now, when my kids were younger and we were homeschooling with Sonlight, I would take a Sunday afternoon about once a month or every month and a half, and I would do this. I would pull out the next 4 to 6 weeks, load it into my smaller binder, and then just spend a little bit of time kind of flipping through and seeing what the next month's worth of work was going to bring. Now, perhaps you like to divide up your materials by subject. So maybe you want to invest in a couple smaller binders, again, maybe a 1.5 to 2-inch binder, and pull out your science materials and put them in a science binder, or pull out your language arts materials and put them in a language arts binder. And then leave your core materials in that larger 3-inch binder. So now you've got your materials all organized by subject, and for some families, that's a better way to go. Or maybe you want to pull out the student activity sheets. Now remember, those only come with language arts or science, but those are for your students to complete. They're the equivalent of a worksheet. So maybe you want to pull those out and put all the student activity sheets into your child's separate binder. And whether you hand over that binder with all those activity sheets at the beginning of the year, or maybe you decide just to keep it as a separate binder and then pull out the individual activity sheets when your children need them, that's entirely up to you. But it could be that you find it easier to have those organized separately as well. So those are a few tips and ideas on how you might organize or tweak that main big binder, your filing cabinet of Sonlight materials, to better fit your school needs. So once you have organized your binder the way you want it, you need to take a few moments to get acquainted with the materials that are inside the binder. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or hot chocolate or maybe a glass of iced tea, whatever works for you. Carve out some quiet moments in your day, which I know can truly be a challenge, especially if you have toddlers. But you need to spend some time to read through what's inside that binder. The more familiar you are with it before you start your school year, the more organized you're going to feel and the more smoothly your school year is going to run. So let's talk just briefly about the different sections that you're going to find in your instructor's guide. If there's nothing else that you read in your entire instructor's guide, I would highly recommend reading the introductory material. Those are those pages that we loaded in front of that Week 1 divider tab. That introductory material is going to give you some ideas and tips for using your instructor's guide. There will be some suggestions from other Sonlight users on what they've found to be helpful. You will find some discussion about why we designed different sections of the instructor's guide the way we did. Just a whole lot of very practical, very important material to read before you get started. Now, you may be like me. You may be one of those people who puts the bike together without reading the instructions, or who builds the entertainment center or the bookcase without reading instructions, because certainly you can do it without instructions. That's just not true. with your Sonlight Instructor's Guide, so please take a few minutes to at least read the introductory material. Next, what you're going to find in that introductory section is what we call a topics and skills chart, which is really just a fancy name for a scope and sequence. Excuse me. What this is going to do is outline for you, week by week, the main topics that you're going to study and the skills that your children are going to learn. And you'll find these charts in your Core Instructor's Guide, in your Language Arts, and in your Science. These are particularly helpful if you have to fill out some sort of paperwork for your school district at the beginning of the year to let them know what you're going to be studying. You can use this topics and skills chart to give your school district a good overview of what's coming up for the school year. Now, in your Core Instructor's Guide, you will find a timeline figure schedule. Those timeline figures are going to come wrapped separately, either in a Ziploc bag or shrink wrapped, and what they are is sheets of sticky back paper that have timeline figures printed on them. This schedule is going to give you some idea of how those individual figures are used throughout the year. In other words, when you want to go ahead and mount them into your book of time. Now, different people utilize these timeline figures in different ways. Some people like to cut them all out before the school year begins and then paper clip them to the weeks of the school year when they're going to be used. Other people like to cut them all out at the beginning of the school year and drop them into a Ziploc bag that they tuck into the back of their binder. Whatever you need to do to make sure that they don't get lost or to make sure that you actually use them, feel free to give it a try. Find what works best for you for the school year, but this schedule will be very helpful in letting you know when each one of those figures is going to be used. Then we come to one of the largest sections of your instructor's guide, and that is the weekly schedule pages. These are the pages that are going to tell you day by day what books to use, how much you're going to read from each of those books, which activity sheets are assigned, writing assignments that are given. They really are those pages that indicate that Sonlight has done all the work of scheduling and planning for you. So take some time to familiarize yourself with how those look. Look on your Science Instructor's Guide schedule pages to locate the shopping list, for example, that's going to let you know what materials you need in the coming weeks to do your science experiments. Take a look on those scheduling pages for different icons that we may have put on there to help you know when to schedule different things. And you may also come up with some creative ways to use those scheduling pages for record keeping for your school district or for your own records. Just lots of different ways that you can utilize those pages. Behind those weekly schedule pages, you're going to find teaching notes. You'll find some in your Core Instructors pages. You will find certainly teaching notes after each week of your Language Arts scheduling pages. And you'll find some teaching notes behind your Science Instructor's Guide schedule pages. Take a look at those, read over them, get familiar with how they're laid out, just so that you know what you're looking for as your school year commences. In your Language Arts and Science Instructor's Guide, you're going to find student activity sheets, and you'll also find answers to those activity sheets. These are those workbook-type pages that your students are going to do. You may decide, again, to keep them in your main large 3-inch binder, or maybe you've pulled them out and put them into a separate binder for your students. But take a look at how they're laid out so that you can explain them easily to your students when they use them. Following the scheduling pages will be a section of what we call appendices. This is just a whole section full of great resources that would be helpful to you throughout your school year. For example, you may find a list of practical life skills, those skills that your students should be learning to do throughout the school year that really aren't considered academics. Maybe folding laundry or balancing a checkbook or mowing the lawn or whatever those practical life skills are. You may find copies of original documents, speeches made by famous historical figures, just a lot of different resources that are worthwhile looking through in the appendices section of your instructor's guide. And then finally, in the back of your instructor's guide, this is the other largest section, and those are the study guide notes. These are the notes, comprehension and discussion questions for the books that your student is reading and you are reading to them throughout the school year. Take some time to really look these over. Many of them include notes to mom and dad. You'll find timeline and mapping assignments built in. So take some time to make sure you understand how they're laid out so that you can make good use of those as your school year begins. Now that we've read through your instructor's guide and have gotten familiar with all the parts and pieces, I want to just wrap up our time together by sharing what's probably the most important piece of advice I give any new Sonlight user. And that is to please remember that this instructor's guide is a tool, and you are the master. You're the one that's using the tool, not the other way around. Very often when I talk with new Sonlight users, the most common concern I hear is, I'm getting behind, or I'm not using all the study guide notes, or is it bad that my students aren't getting all those student activity sheets done? Just a lot of concerns because they're not making use of every page in their instructor's guide. Please let me reassure you and give you permission to set aside or take out or X off any portions of this instructor's guide that are not helpful for your family. We have designed these guides to be just packed chock full of materials for homeschooling families. But obviously, we have no way of knowing what will work for every Sonlight family. So it's up to you as the parent-teacher to use those parts that work best for you and to set aside or ignore those parts that just aren't necessary for your family. And you can do so without guilt. So please remember, you are the master, and this is your tool. And as your school year goes along, tweak this instructor's guide so that it works best for your family. So hopefully this material has given you just a really good overview of how to put together and use your instructor's guide for this coming year, and especially, as I mentioned, how to use it as your tool. And I just wish you an awesome and wonderful year of learning with Sonlight.